So I just saw The Amazing Bulk, Kingdom of the Kidney Stones, and I enjoyed it a lot. I was actually surprised to see a Marvel movie that actually had consequences for the main heroes ever since the first Avengers movie. Now I classify myself as a Marvel fan. I enjoy the cinematic universe and the creativity and passion behind this project. Even if they made some bland, mediocre films, I still love this universe regardless. It's all thanks to everyone working in Marvel, from the executive producer, the writers, directors, actors, the editors, and so on. Everyone involved did a great job in making this movie event. So if you haven't seen it, might want to click off soon since I'll talk about spoilers for a bit. But before you do, I recommend this film and go see it if you're a Marvel fan and have seen all of these films by now. You won't be disappointed. And if you don't like Marvel, then just don't go see it. It's simple as that. Stop trying to ruin the fun of others and go watch Justice League, asshole. That's all I have to say for the spoiler-free review. So again, if you haven't seen it, click off in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Man, I can't believe Thanos called Black Panther a So, on to the things I like. Well, for once, a superhero film with a huge budget enough to take care of my entire student debt and Hentai Haven subscription, the CGI looks really good, especially on Thanos. The action is entertaining and there's never a dull moment. I really like the twist and turn in the story overall, such as having Thanos actually accomplishing his goal 100% in the end. In all superhero movies, it's either a villain loses in such an embarrassing way, or they do accomplish their task, but there was a bit of a setback. If I'm not mistaken, this is the only film that ends with the main antagonist's victory. That I did not see coming. Other things I like are the different subplots, especially Thor's journey, who at first was my least favorite Avenger and now is my favorite in this film. Seriously, Thor was really cool, and I can't believe I just said that. I almost jumped out of my seat when Red Skull showed up as well. That was shocking and I almost screamed. I also had no idea that Peter Dinklage was going to be in the film, and the fact that he was playing a giant dwarf almost made me choke in laughter. The soundtrack was exceptional and seemed to be a bit more memorable for once, and the color grading was fantastic and it never looked dull. The shaky cam this time doesn't look like a cameraman was having a seizure unlike in Civil War in the beginning, and the cinematography was decent. It wasn't anything revolutionary, but it wasn't bad at all. The rest of the cast were good and exceptional, but they weren't as interesting since we already covered their character development in previous films, and this film doesn't have the premise to continue on. Few characters such as Thor, Gamora, Iron Man, Rocket, Spider-Man were great, and the rest were just kinda there, but they did contribute enough for me to enjoy their presence. The Black Order was actually pretty cool and menacing, and I especially loved Squidward. He was my favorite of the four. Rest weren't all that interesting since they have the same personality of other generic villains before, but they certainly don't weigh the film down at all. The death scenes for the characters were shocking and were pretty depressing, especially Spider-Man, which I try not to cry honestly. This movie fucked me up and I was so lost for words that it took time for me to process what I just saw. It's been a while since I've seen a superhero movie that hit me this hard that it left a lasting impression on me on the way back home. The last film that did it for me was Logan, and before that it was The Dark Knight. On to the negatives, well, I don't really have one in particular to be honest. In fact, it's kind of hard to judge this movie because, as many have said before, this really isn't a movie with a style or a unique voice, but more like an event. And that's not a bad thing at all. In fact, that's all I really need in a big superhero event movie such as this. When I judge solo films, I judge them based on the protagonist and the story that revolves around them, whereas films like Avengers, I rate them based on entertainment and character interaction. Infinity War did give me that, and gave me more than I did not expect. If I really have to criticize this film, I think my major complaint really is that Star-Lord is kind of a fucking idiot. I understand his situation and his reaction is justified, but it really doesn't make sense to me how he would beat Thanos with his gun instead of just fucking blowing his brains out right here and there. I mean, he did that to his own father in Guardians 2, when Ego admitted he killed his mother. Now, there's nothing wrong with that scene in particular, but I just felt that it was a bit half-assed, especially since we've seen a similar situation before. The Hulk was pretty much useless. I don't hate the fact that he was underutilized, but it's just the marketing pretty much lied to our faces. Remember this shot? Yeah, that didn't happen at all. Speaking of the Hulk, I said the CGI is really good, but for some reason when I see Bruce's head onto the Hulkbuster, it looks so bad that I almost want to laugh out loud. There are certain moments like that, especially Tony in his suit, and it looks really fake. Whereas for Iron Spider, he actually looks pretty decent. Another bad thing I could think of, this is more of a personal preference. I kinda wish that they explained Thanos' backstory just a bit more. I read that Thanos is apparently treated as an outcast because he was different and was deformed compared to the other Titans. They said he is like the hunchback of Notre Dame in his homeworld, so I would really love to see some flashback scenes of Thanos back then before his homeworld was destroyed. That to me would have been more impactful, and we can clearly visualize how Thanos was treated and why he believes his plan is the right way to go. just having it all in dialogue just kinda seems a bit lazy to me. Because after all, Thanos is essentially the main character in this story. He is the only character who has enough screen time for the audience to get to know him and understand where he comes from, whereas the Avengers are just there just to be obstacles for him. Another thing I have thought would be great to add some weight to the film is if Bucky fingered Captain America's asshole and while moaning, "I can do this all day." Other than that, I have no real complaints, and I definitely want to go see it again to see if I like it better the second time or if I found things I don't like that I haven't noticed. Overall, I had a great time. My friends had a great time, and I was glad I was able to witness a film with a villain who leaves a huge impact to the heroes and the audience. And I give this film an 8 out of 10, and I would rank it probably in my top 5 MCU films.